You can sync audio.
Ayo. That was better. There we go. Hey, if you're a homeowner and you're thinking at some point I've got to sell my house, I'm going to share with you the dangers of hiring somebody who's inexperienced to sell your house. And the reason this matters is this could literally cost you a fortune. So I'm going to give you the 4 questions that I would ask a realtor if I was sitting down interviewing them. And if you wait till the very end, I'm going to answer these questions myself to give you a point of reference. Now, just so you know, the reason you should be listening to me is, in case you don't know me, my name's Nicolle. I'm a professional, fully licensed realtor. I sell, $30 million worth of houses a year or more. And the reason I'm shooting this is that this is your biggest financial investment. We want to get this right. So let's jump in. First and foremost, 1/3 of realtors pretty much in any given area do 0 transactions on that real estate board. And then 50% of those realtors do 1 deal a year, okay? So most realtors are out there running around with licenses doing no deals. To make things even worse, only 10% of realtors on any given board do 10 transactions a year or less. So that means that the top 1% are the agents doing all the transactions, and we want to make sure that if you're interviewing an agent, you're interviewing someone in the top 10%. I like to compare it to this. Would you send a family member that you love to a doctor who sees 10 patients a year, or would you send them to a doctor that sees, 5 to 10 patients a day, or even 5 to 10 patients a week? This is what's going on with most realtors. It's like wanting to get eye surgery and going to an eye surgeon who does 3 eye surgeries a year versus someone who does 3 a week, okay? That's the comparison. Obviously, you're gonna wanna hire the more experienced doctor, someone who actually has a track record. Now, my goal for today is to make sure that you don't hire a salesperson. And what I mean by that is this. We want to hire a well-connected marketer who knows how to negotiate. Those are the 3 things that we're looking for. We're looking for marketing skills, we're looking for someone with a network, and we're looking for someone who knows how to negotiate. So let's separate the salesperson from the actual track record, and let's dive into these questions. Here's the very first question you should ask a realtor. How many sales have you done in the last 12 months? And see what they say. Ask them what their sales volume is. Ask them things about their sales volume. Like, for example, following in the same question of sales volume, what's the average price of houses you sell? How many houses in my price range have you sold? Understanding their experience selling houses, because right away, they're gonna probably tell you where they fit in that bracket of have you done 10 transactions? And here's the other thing, the word transactions in real estate is something that you call any version of selling a house. So if you're the listing agent, that means you're representing a seller listing their house for sale and helping sell their house. But if you're working with buyers, that means you're going out with buyers, you're shopping around at houses, and you're ultimately helping them purchase a house. So the question you've got to ask is, how many houses have you sold? How many houses have you helped buy this year? And that's gonna form the total number of transactions. So you might, for example, have someone that says to you, I've done 10 transactions this year, or I've sold 10 homes. And you go, great, how many of them were listings versus buyers? And you might realize really quickly, the vast majority of what they're actually working with are buyers. And while that's awesome because it gives them good perspective of working with buyers, it also means they might not know how to properly list a house and stage it and clean it, and the timeline that they need to set up, and negotiating with other buyer agents. Maybe they've only negotiated with listing agents. So first question, how many transactions have you done? And break it down to say, how many listings have you had? How many houses like mine have you actually sold this year? The second question that I want you to ask agents as you're going through this process is I want you to ask them, when's the last time you sold a house? Because maybe they sold a bunch of houses, but it's been 6 months, or maybe it's actually been 12 months and they're like 11 months ago I sold some houses, and they're borrowing from their last year's track record. And then when they tell you about the last house that they sold, ask them how it went. Did it sell? How long was it on the market? How many offers did you secure? What did you sell for relative to the price that you listed it at? So you can see right away how the questions open up the gateway for you to have meaningful conversation. The last house that you sold, tell me how it went, because it's gonna share with you truth about how they're gonna treat you when they have your house listed for sale. And the first two questions, by the way, we're using some filtering methods. So the very first question of asking how many houses they've sold, this is talking about qualifying the agent. You're really qualifying them to understand their skill level. And the second question is looking for proof. You're like, how did your last sale go? Show me the proof that you're selling houses and how it's all going. And then the third question is about honesty. You ready for this one? The third question that I want you to ask is, what could go wrong? And here's why this is an honesty question. If the agent's like, nothing ever goes wrong, they're lying to you, because I'm an agent who sells tons of houses and things go wrong. And I'll tell you why. Things go wrong anytime you're dealing with people. And real estate is a business of dealing with people. You might think we're dealing with houses, but it's actually dealing with the people that are buying and selling those houses. And the houses are just the thing that are allowing you and engaging you with people, working with people. So the reason it's an honesty question is what you're gonna get out of it is truth about what you should be concerned about, what could go wrong, what might happen. And if that agent's not giving you the truth then, they're not gonna give you the truth later. And I can't wait to tell you guys the things that can go wrong, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second and what you should be concerned about. And the fourth and final question that I want you to be asking yourself, what is it? I actually don't remember.
It's problem solving.
And what's the...
Tell me about your last.
And the fourth question that I want you to ask is, tell me about the last listing that you had that failed. And the truth is, any agent that's been an agent long enough that has done a bunch of transactions will have tons of horror stories. And here's why it's a good thing. Horror stories help agents learn, and you actually want agents that have been through some stuff. If they again say to you, I've only ever had great listings, they probably haven't sold that many houses, number one. And number two, what if things go wrong with your listing? How are they gonna problem solve it? So we're actually testing, with that fourth question, we're testing their problem solving ability. Because what we wanna hear is we want them to tell us the horror stories, and then we wanna know what they did and how they responded and how they tried to overcome those challenges, those objections, those horrifying things, so that you know you're in good hands. Now, let's have some fun. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go through these questions and I am gonna share examples of responses that you would wanna hear from an agent, and I'll share off the cuff how I would answer these questions. You ready? Sebastian, hit me with the first question.
Hey Jake, so what would you say is your personal sales volume in a year?
Awesome. So Sebastian, thank you for asking. We're really fortunate that our team allows me to focus on selling houses rather than doing things like coming and cleaning your house, which we're gonna have someone do, or staging your house, or the photography video. We have vendors that we work with, so that allows me to actually sell quite a few homes a year. In the last 12 months, we've sold more than 30 homes, and about 17 of those were seller listings. And the remaining amount, the 13 other ones, were me working with buyers. Now, the reason I think that that's useful for you to know is that we list a lot of homes every year, but we also work with buyers on the buying side. So I understand, because I walk through a lot of houses, not just the houses that I list, what buyers are looking for, the kinds of things that buyers really don't like, the kinds of things that other buyers agents, when they walk through our listing, are going to point out and bring up as negatives or as positives for your home listing. Sebastian, what's the second question?
Could you tell me a little bit about your last listing?
Absolutely. So the very last listing that we had was a condo on the waterfront that we sold. And what I can tell you right away about that property is that we got just a little bit under the asking price, which in this market, we got 1% under the asking price. In this market, the average is actually 3 to 5% under the asking price. So we did a great job in terms of the market average, and the property was listed for $799. We felt that we listed it aggressively, but very fair market value, and we sold for $795. Now, probably the most important thing to understand, because there's a $4,000 difference there on price, is that there was actually only a handful of showings. So that was a really good price, considering the market was very slow, and we ended up bringing the buyer. So the coolest part of all is the buyer actually came from our marketing. They came through one showing, they wrote an offer the same day, and we sold that property in 2 weeks. So now that I'm done answering that question, I want you to notice a couple things that I pointed out actually as I was answering it. So stepping out of interview mode. First thing, I explained the price that it sold for. I told you how long it was on the market, 2 weeks. I explained to you a little bit of the fact that the market situation, as you know, any agent should already have told you about. I explained where the market was at. the difference between our sale price compared to the normal sale price, and then I also explain where the buyer came from. So you want to look for those answers, and if you don't get them, just ask them. Say like, great, where did the buyer come from? How did you negotiate the price? What happened? So the other thing I can tell you that I didn't mention, and if you had asked me, how did you secure that price? The original offer was coming in 50 grand under the price that we ended up selling for. So they didn't come in at 795 and everybody was happy. They were like, how about we offer you guys like 745? And I was like, that's not gonna work. And I had to negotiate them all the way up just below our listing price. They needed to feel like they were gonna win a little bit. So there's an example. Asking the questions, answering good questions makes a big difference. Sebastian, hit me with the next question.
So Jake, we're a little nervous about selling our property. Is there anything that could go wrong?
Awesome question. Number one, things go wrong in real estate regularly, and it depends how big or little a deal it is. For example, are you asking a question like, are things gonna go wrong with our staging or our cleaning? Or like, are things gonna go wrong with someone stealing stuff from our house? Or like, I don't know, issues with showings? So what I can tell you is this, when it comes to things going wrong, usually what we're talking about is not selling your home as quickly as we'd like to. So time on the market. Price, are we gonna get the price that we want? What could go wrong with price? So when it comes to things going wrong around time on the market, the average time on the market right now in our market is about 22 days. And the way that we ensure we sell within that time frame is really reflective of price point. The houses that are listed too high tend to sit longer on the market. And by the time they reduce in price, now we're in a situation where the market's dropped further. So we want to try and get ahead of that. That's a great example of something that can go wrong, is we sit on the market too long, price comes down, and now we're stuck there. The other thing that could go wrong is we get a bad offer. What do we do? What are our options? So if we get a lowball offer, we never have to accept it. We have three options. We can accept offers, which we don't need to do. We can counter them, which means once we've countered it, we can't go back and accept it. It's now in counter territory. The ball is in their court, or we can just reject it and ignore the offer and let it expire. Those are our three options. So if we get a bad offer, we can simply accept, counter, or reject it. I'm gonna do everything in my power to negotiate to push that offer up, but those are some obstacles. We might get some really bad offers. And if we're getting zero showings at all, that's a reflection of marketing. So we've got pricing, we've got time on the market, we've got exposure. When it comes to what could go wrong with getting exposure, your home is the product that I am trying to help sell. We want to make sure that the product looks really good, that it smells good, that it like appeals to the senses. It feels good. Everything's well put together. The property is really well arranged. That's going to give us the best likelihood of having an amazing product that's a product that buyers want, paired with marketing that gets us a lot of exposure so that we see a lot of traffic and showings, and ultimately that we can sell and negotiate up to the highest price. So those are some of the things that can go wrong and how I would focus on remedying them.
So actually, even on the topic of things going wrong, could you tell me about a listing that failed?
Awesome, absolutely. So as an agent who sells a bunch of homes every year, there's undeniably situations where things go wrong. There's things that are within our control, there's maybe things that are outside of our control. An example of things outside of our control are massive shifts in the market. The last big shift that happened, I had a listing that was coming up, and the seller, we had a pricing issue, and the seller ultimately felt that their home was worth more than I felt like it was worth in the market. And what ended up happening is we listed on the market and we got no showings. And after 2 weeks, I came back to them and said, hey guys, we probably need to lower our price. And the challenge was at that point, that seller was really committed to their price. So they sat on the market another 3 months, we canceled the listing, and then guess what happened? They relisted with another agent. They went right down to the price that I had suggested for them. I was actually the only agent to bring them an offer. They rejected it, and then they lowered their price below the offering price that I had brought to them. So that's an example from my perspective of a failed listing. I didn't do a good enough job of really persuading those sellers, whether or not I could have, to trust my guidance on price. And that was my mistake, and I won't make that mistake again. So that was something that I learned. And there's a great example, guys, for you listening to this, of a price challenge and then facing a market challenge where you have to adjust and roll with the punches and trust the guidance of your real estate agent. Because that decision to not take my guidance, hire someone else, reject an offer that I brought them, ended up costing them probably $100,000 at minimum. And I can give you examples, by the way, of failed negotiations that I had with buyers, where the main listing agent of a property, I was bringing the offer from buyers, and the listing agent decided to go away on vacation. and I brought an offer to that property and the owner rejected it. But the problem was the listing agent was away, so she assigned an agent who was kind of like a mid-level agent at the brokerage to help the sellers decide if they were gonna sell and accept the offer. She didn't do a good enough job twisting that seller's arm, who should have accepted the fantastic offer that we brought. They rejected our offer and they ended up lowering their price $50,000 under the last offer that we had brought them, and my buyers found something else and we moved on, and they never ended up selling that house. So another example of pricing in the market from not just my perspective of a listing gone wrong, but actually from the other perspective of bringing an offer that should have been accepted, the sellers declined it, and then we didn't get a deal done. So price plays a really big part in it. You know, I don't really have any examples of properties going wrong in terms of the marketing, because that's something that we're pretty good at, but those things can happen. So there's a quick answer. Now, if you're watching this and you're confused about the current market in Ontario with real estate prices, interest rates, everything that's going on, click this playlist where I break down each month exactly what's happening in the market so that you can be as educated as possible in making your real estate decisions. Seriously, click this playlist. You're gonna love it. Click it, check it out. Cheers, guys.